Hello, welcome to part 2 of my two-part series on CIMs and CBRs. You know, the documents that brokers and sellers hand searchers up front when they want to entice you to buy the business offering. If you haven't heard part 1, please go to my YouTube channel and find it. I'm Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate. Look for the title, CIMs and CBRs. The ugly. You're going to see one of the worst examples of CIMs. Now, for today, we're going to talk about good news. I'm going to share with you one of the best CIMs, as well as show you some flaws. So stay with us. And Scott Weevil is our special guest, transaction attorney. This is the best kind of CIM I've seen in my multi-decade career. Is it on screen share yet?
Not yet.
Ta-da! There it is. Everybody see it? We're going to go through this page by page. Don't worry, we're not going to read every page. But what I want you to understand is this is how good it gets when you're talking to a broker who's transparent, honest. He really wants you to get buyer fever. He wants you to get it right now. And he's going to show you enough where you realize that this is a no BS proposition. You're not going to see this often. I would say you'll see this 1% of the time. At the end or somewhere during this presentation, I'm going to show you how to motivate brokers, because that's mostly who feeds this stuff to you, to give you this kind of information. Even they start with something that's pretty lousy. This is look what it is. It's a cleaning and janitorial supplies company. The first thing I don't like, remember, this is the best of the best. The first thing I don't like, can you see my cursor? Yes. Scott, can you see my cursor? Good.
Yes.
Look what the price is, $1,950,000. And then the itty bitty print plus inventory estimated at $2.5 million. Anybody can guess what the real price is? You don't have to guess. Okay, that's real cute. Look how beautiful it is. No misspelled words yet. Here's the message. Let's see. This one's from the broker. So I kind of like that. Guy puts his picture in. He says, here's who I am. Look at this. This is the table of contents. Disclaimers. This is what I wonder about. I don't think if I'm representing the sellers in a CIM, I would load up the first document a buyer sees or a searcher sees with a disclaimer. You're going to see why in a moment. And wouldn't you like to see this scope of coverage, especially before you have to do an LOI? So look at those topics. Look at those topics. About half of these, I predict that none of you will ever see in any CIM. But that doesn't mean we can't get it, and I'm going to show you how to get it. So here, look, the first thing you see, you're a searcher. You're scared to death. You don't trust anybody, rightfully. And somebody hands you this thing, and it starts with all this legal stuff. And what do the typical buyers do? Well, they sign it. Not smart. What they should be doing is having a lawyer on call, at least for the first 1 or 2 disclaimers and NDAs, just so the lawyer can spend 20 or 30 minutes with you to say, this is nonsense, or to say, hey, if you don't mind the risk, sign it. Call me later when you need some help. I'm going to expand this a little bit. So look what I highlighted. This is the business brokerage. And we're talking about the searcher. The broker accepts no responsibility. Look at that. No responsibility. This one. If they find out there's anything that changed with the accuracy, no responsibility. How about this? No liability. You just sign a blank check. Second, hey, this is a 2-page one. The buyer and or their accountant, financial advisors should make their own inquiries. Why? Because the broker hasn't verified anything. And we don't make any representation. Why not? How about this? The buyer and the accountant, blah, blah, blah. Only the records disclosed. They're talking about skimming. If you see this in here, you got to wonder why. How about add backs? They say these add backs are estimations only. Yeah, but it's the basis for valuing the company. They make up these add backs, then they tell you that is the number you multiply by some risk factor for price. I mean, please. By the way, if it's just a disclaimer and you don't have to sign it, so what? If it's an NDA and you have to sign it, you better really be thinking about that one. How about this? It just says anything they say to you is just fine. Okay, look at this. I kind of like this. I doubt you'll ever see this, or very often. Remember, this is the broker's document representing the seller. The broker got the seller to go on record saying, cross my heart and hope to die, everything I've told you is true. That's pretty cool. Look what the broker says. Well, yeah, the seller says, I commit myself to properly advise the business brokerage in writing. Hey, guess what? You want that seller also communicating with you, because what if the broker doesn't get the email? What if the broker forgets to tell you? What if it's bad news and the broker intentionally doesn't tell you? Because guess what? You signed off saying he can, no responsibility. Get it? I'll try to calm down, but this stuff pisses me off. So here's what you need to do. You need to hire advisors who do this kind of work every day, not the divorce lawyer, not the person who does your income taxes, not your cousin, those people. People like me, people like Scott, anybody else, they're going to either kill deals they should not kill, or they're going to mess up deals. Don't be a do-it-yourselfer. Okay. Oh, yeah. I like it that this broker spends some time talking about their ethics and their code of ethics, we'll call it, code of conduct. This is nice, if it's true. But guess what? Good brokers are going to overpower you, searchers. You will find out. If you don't have somebody like me or Scott on your team, you will discover brokers know way more than you do. I don't care how much homework you did, and the level of the playing field is tilted against you. Go to my website and find 62 reasons for sellers hiring brokers. 62. The good news is my clients buy businesses directly from owners. There are no brokers. But if you're dealing through brokers, you better know the power they bring to the table. Buyer education. Hey, when a broker's educating you, take it with a grain of salt. Remember, they don't work for you. They work for the seller. Right? Oh, I like the way that works. So we're not even going to look at this, but it's good stuff. Good stuff. We haven't gotten to the meat yet. Notice how much time they put to tenderize you. It's kind of like dating. You know, they want to get you in the mood. Executive summary. Okay, yeah, I like that. Here's the reason for sale. The seller wishes to retire. Uh-huh. Probe on that one. How about turnover? Now, that's a term used in Canada and Australia and the UK, let's say the British Empire. In America, we call turnover revenue. By the way, this is a Florida company, so I don't know why they would use the word turnover, but that means revenue. So look, the revenue is $6.5 million for 2018. Now that's okay. If you receive this in February of 2019, okay. But if you receive this 2 years later, it's too old. You must have year-to-date information right now. This is what, March 2021? If a broker doesn't show you, or an owner cannot show you now, immediately, financial statements for December 31st last year, which would be December 31st, 2020, you got to wonder why. Now, let's say it's halfway down the next year. You get the trailing 12 months profit and loss statement and balance sheet. Now that they have to make. Most of them don't have it because most owners don't pay attention to that. But you must ask, hey, I'm not spending a lot of time with lawyers, accountants, my own due diligence, avoiding other deals, unless I see the trailing 12 months, because if the last 6 months are dirt, I don't want to dig in it. And that not only applies because of this pandemic. How about net profit, EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes? one of the things you're going to find is this thing called E for earnings. Brokers like to call it seller's discretionary earnings or cash flow or whatever. It's a good BS term, very dangerous for buyers and searchers. You better have good counsel before you buy into that term, let alone the adjustments. Look at this. The business got 833,000 of seller discretionary earnings. Who says it's discretionary? Don't worry, we're going to get it at toward the end. I hope you stay here, because if you miss that, you're going to make a bad deal. It's toward the end of this show. How about the inventory? Oh yeah, that's right. The asking price was what? 1.9. They didn't mention too much, the 2.5. So guess what? All of a sudden, in page 12, it's in your face that the real price is $4,450,000. Well, you better compare that to what they call the profit. And you better compare that to a 43% return on investment. Yeah? What's the calculation for that? It's not the specific facts that we need to worry about in this thing. I'm just pointing out the kind of stuff that's designed to give you buyer fever. And I want you to have buyer fever. We want you to, but just not a fatal case. Oh, look, here's an executive summary. Oops, there, I'm sorry. Page down. Okay, I like this, very pretty. Look how beautiful this thing is. When they start talking about the financial performance means zip, nada, nothing, unless it's in context of something. And the only thing it should be in context with is the statistics you get from third-party databases that collect information from businesses and report it. And there are tons of them. Some you'll get the information from the IRS, others you'll get it from bank loan portfolios. In other words, banks provide the data. And now you can see what's the cost of sales for all the other business in my city for this size of company in that niche, blah, blah, blah. You can actually compare. Otherwise, what? What good does it do? Recession proof? Your question is, let's show me some financial statements from 2008 to 10. How did this business do during the global or Great Recession? Oh, not to mention the pandemic. Or how about right now? So when they tell you this recession-proof stuff, please. Systems and processes, almost no small business does a good enough job, and the one that almost all of them screw up because they ignore it is cybersecurity. You buy the business, the first month you find out you have a major breach and you're out of business. Oops. You better look into it. One of the screening devices my clients use, we have, I think it's like 18 questions. One of them is, what's your history with cybersecurity and risks? And then we have a checklist that we're looking for. If they don't pass that checklist in the first interview of the broker and seller, we dump the deal. This is your biggest risk nowadays. You think you can do dumb deals? You can do a smart deal. This will kill you. Exceptional growth. Whenever you hear any of these representations and claims, it's really puffery. It's probably hyperbole. Just say, show me the evidence. Remember that old commercial, show me the beef? If they can't show you the evidence, this is useless. Strong brand name and market reputation. Yeah, that sounds really cool. And this business really looks beautiful. But this is your question. What exactly are your sustainable competitive advantages? What exactly that you do that causes you to take customers away from competitors? Later, you'll see how they handle the competitor issue. I love this. I'll give you all my books for free if you show me somebody that does as good a job as these people do on the competitor analysis. But you got to make that request before the end of this show. No, I'm kidding. Look at this. Positive financial performance. Oh, Jesus, you got to learn to do this. I'm really sorry that I'm not hitting the down button. I'm so busy looking at you. Here's the business overview. They're talking about their customers. They have strong, nurtured relationships. And with suppliers, they say this about both. So here's the question. What's been the turnover of the suppliers and the customers? With respect to the suppliers, what are the terms of purchasing? If it's a customer, what are the terms of sale? And what about customer satisfaction? And what about supplier satisfaction? One of the things we do is we find out. I won't tell you how we do it because I don't want to be on tape for it, but we find out from customers and suppliers what they think of this company. And we do it in ways that in no way gets used against us, them, or anybody, and we don't violate any kind of non-disclosure documents. Just realize if you don't hear it from the suppliers and the customers, all this is pretty talk, but it doesn't mean it's so. Well, it doesn't mean you can be totally comfortable. You know, here they say, and I like this in their overview, they say that they are operating in a mature and oversaturated industry. Well, you better pay attention to that because that could be why the business is for sale. It's getting so oversaturated that the good days are about to be over. But I have to love this company and this broker because they actually say, we're in a highly competitive, oversaturated. That means there are more companies selling this product than there are customers. I love brokers and owners that put this out. And they talk about their their flawless service. Let's see some customer surveys you did. No customer survey? Maybe we searchers want to do one of those in due diligence with the seller or owner's help. The broker won't play along, but if you're doing your job right with the owner will, because if the owner wants to sell to you, it's what it's going to take. What about this? Furthermore, the owner believes that the business will continue growing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if he believes so much in it, is he going to provide seller or buyer financing? No, not much belief. If the owner believes in this future so much, is the owner going to agree to flexible terms of purchase, maybe holdbacks, earnouts, things like that? Something to think about. A well-built internal structure. This is hugely important. And if it's there, make them show you, because that makes it a business you definitely want to look at, you know, unless everything else is wrong. So that's what they do. And again, look at the cool graphics. You can see that, you know, this wasn't done in an hour using Microsoft Word. This is very professional. There's the history. Forget about it. It's just a nice business. Look, here's the time. I love this. I wish everyone did this. This on one page gives you a sense of what in the heck is this thing about. But notice what's not on here. I mean, folks, this is what, 2021. We've had the internet for many years. There's never been any kind of cyber breach in this or any other company. Get them to make a representation on that. Later, your lawyer might want to put that in the contract. You want to ask about major setbacks. Most brokers, including this one, won't put in here, we nearly went out of business in 2008. But look, they were doing great during the Great Recession. But what if they weren't? I don't think you'll see this. So you got to ask, okay, I love this timeline, but what about setbacks? And what about litigation? Scott, here's a time for you maybe to pipe in about, at this early looking at a CIM, if you don't see a timeline, you should ask about one. And if you do see one, you got to be asking about these things that could cause you to want to stop right now. What do you think, Scott?
For sure. I think definitely the litigation, including with employees, that's definitely something you want to look into, especially if there's a pattern of employee litigation, because that's something that could come up in anything like this with a warehouse, potentially hazardous chemicals being stored and sold. You want to be concerned about environmental, probably want very strong environmental reps, maybe even certainly if it's a gas station or a laundromat, you want an environmental report, you want to study, but it's definitely something to look into here too. And so basically what you want to do is take the risks that you learn through diligence and just based on the individual industry in question, and you want to make sure you have reps that protect you against those issues that come up.
You know, one of the things that I notice searchers do is they get deep into due diligence. They pay lawyers for the LOI. I hope they pay lawyers for the LOI and they don't download it from the internet. And they discover too late that it takes some kind of license to operate the company, or there is some risk that they could have easily identified if they would have asked these questions. Look at this. I mean, I want to buy this business just based on this CIM, or at least I want to get really serious about it. Look, it's going to get a lot better. My purpose today is to show you the ugly, but I'm going to praise it where I can. But basically, I love every page of this thing, every page, and most of its content. Look at how pretty this is. Of course, it does make me wonder, since these people have a warehouse and they deliver to their customers, what the online ordering venues are going to mean to this company. Later, you'll hear they haven't done much yet online. For a buyer, this could be a wonderful opportunity to get this stuff online. But meanwhile, maybe one of the real reasons for sale is customers say, hey, why do I want to wait for place an order, wait for the truck, when I can click Amazon and have it tomorrow morning, or maybe today? The customer base. The key here is you need to look for diversity. You buy a business that depends on one customer and you lose the customer and your business goes insolvent, bank calls the loan, you're done, your house is taken. And don't think about suing sellers. They already have your money. Wait till you find out what it costs to do that. This is the benefits to the kinds of customers. I mean, I just love this. When you're done with this, you really know this business. Look at, in a picture, they break down their customers. Searchers, you have to do this. You have to do this up front. You're going to have to do it yourself. You're going to have to say to a broker, okay, look, who are the suppliers this company is using, and at what is their portion of supply? How much money are we spending on it? How important is their product line to this company's survival? You know, in this kind of business, well, hey, during the pandemic, last July, in my neighborhood, Florida, I think it was the United States, you could not get toilet paper. None, zero, poof. Well, this company sells to other businesses and they need toilet paper. And they need enough to fill up a public shopping or a supermarket or a Safeway supermarket. And you can't deliver it. If a major company gets mad and goes to another supplier who can, it may never come back. That's why we got to look at who the suppliers are, the scope of the product line, and what's been available and not over the last years. Same with customers. Okay, just don't forget the cybersecurity when they're telling you all about their systems. I mean, look at this. I just love the way they break it down. You can actually envision being in this business right about now because they're showing you the gears that make it run. By the way, for those of you who stay to the end of this, I'll give you a link to this as well as another portfolio full of these. Don't stay to the end, you're not going to get it. Evidence, just ask, what's the evidence? Strategic direction. Look at this. I love this. They carry the best brands. Yippee. By the way, the guy selling this company bought it. He bought it in 2004. It had been around many years before that. And what did he do? He expanded into new markets. If you're thinking to buy a business, this is what we want. We don't want to buy a business that's as good as it's ever going to be. We want to buy a business that's got legs. We can do a roll-up or we can exchange it for a bigger or better. We want to use mergers and acquisitions for small businesses. You can't do that if you buy a micro business. If you buy a mom and pop business, what you get is what you see. If it could be better, guess what? The owner would have made it better and bigger. You want to buy a business big enough so that you can use that to do deal number 2. And call me privately if you want to know how big it needs to be, but not that big, believe me. So he had the acquisition strategy, talked about how he wanted to grow it, and he did it with a geographic reach and more products. This is the stuff you need to see up front. This company made it possible for us. Now, this guy talks about he wants to retire, and he's got and there is a management team there. You'll see some of that later. But what I wonder is just how dependent is this business on him? And what kind of money will be necessary when he leaves to pay for top management? Because he says he's working, his hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Well, that's a full-time job. So you have to wonder, if you're buying this business and you want a manager to run it, what you got to pay to get that manager. If you're buying this business and you're going to run it, well, you better have all the skills this guy has. Otherwise, you get to spend more money than this company's spending now for help. Could be industry consultant. It could be a vice president, so we'll call it, number 2 in command. I see buyers and searchers mess this up on almost every deal I've ever seen done. They just minimize what it's going to cost when they go in and run the company. And with my clients, some of which are in this show, I pretty much try to beat them to death on this, that we absolutely have to know what the profit and loss and cash flow statements are going to look like the day after. That means the day after we buy it and the year after. Look at this. I love it. They break down every stinking employee. Look. The roles, how much they're paid. Now, what do we do with the wages? What do? We immediately go online. There are free resources where we can type in warehousing assistant and find out in Tampa, that's where this business is, what the going rate of pay is. We can find out what a general manager gets paid in Tampa for this kind of business. So this guy's paying himself 80 grand. What if we buy this because we're not a bright searcher? We go, oh, it's only 80. But we do that, what I just explained, and we find, well, this guy's underpaying himself because he's making most of his money on dividends from the company. If we want to hire a manager, it's 120,000. Oops, you make that mistake. The day after you buy the business, you've just kissed off 40 grand a year, 4,000, 3,000 a month. So we like to go to those databases and verify every one of these salaries. Takes about 20 minutes. Look at that, here's the bottom person, $22 an hour. Again, we find out, is that in Tampa or your city, what we're going to have to pay? Look, this is just so beautiful. Look at it. Oh my God, I just love this thing so much. Here, strategic. Okay, so he grew to dominate the market. I kind of like that. My question is, now he's selling it. What are you going to get? What if it's already dominated enough? What if there is no more? This means what he has is what you get, period, over. Now you just compete and compete and compete with all those competitors in that oversaturated industry that are trying to take your customers and employees away from you. Think about it. And he says, we've positioned it for further growth. Really? After what we've already heard? How exactly, Mr. Seller or broker, is it positioned? And what's the value I can generate from doing whatever you tell me they didn't do that I could do? I'm the new broom. I'm going to be able to do more. This is the stuff I and Scott and those of us in the deal-making business do with clients. We rip these things apart, even beautiful ones like this, because all of them are kisses of death if you don't know how to work from them. Okay, what? It's most, yeah, they all live around them. Because if they live farther, if the employees live farther away, it's problematic. Yeah, that's a nice disclosure. What if this were in San Francisco? Place where Scott works. People moving out of town. People who work in this kind of company can't work within 50 miles of San Francisco, or they can't live within 50 miles of San Francisco. So speaking of that, there's the map. Okay, real pretty. I'm not like, who cares? But depending on what city, you could care a lot. Because for example, it says 21-minute drive to get here. Is that during commute hours or at midnight? Something to think about. I've done a lot of deals in Los Angeles area where people seem to think, oh, this business is only 10 miles. Yeah, try to go down the 405 at 5 p.m. in 10 miles. Oh my God. And then the county. See, I love this. If this is not in the CIM, you have to go to the government databases. It's free. It's all online. This takes us like 10 or 15 minutes to derive this. So believe me, the broker is not killing himself doing this. Neither is the seller. They go to Hillsborough County, they ask for the county profile, and they copy and paste. But if they don't do it and hand it to you folks, you have to do it. I prefer it when they do it because it gives us something to use against them later. And I don't mean in a negative way, I mean in a nice way when we're negotiating about price and terms. Just more snapshot of where this company is located. Don't worry, we're getting into some juicier stuff in a moment. Now, this is pretty important. Why? Because I see too many businesses change hands where the fly in the ointment is the lease, the landlord. The landlord says, I'm not going to renew your lease. The business owner wants to retire. He finds an unsuspecting buyer. The buyer and legal counsel for the buyer don't early enough look at the lease to discover it's going to mature, or I've seen this happen, like this one has, it has 3 automatic renewals, but guess what some of them leave off? Some of the lease terms, right, Scott? So when that automatic renewal comes up, it may or may not be at the price you want, but there's something worse. I'm going to say it, then I want Scott to comment, because this is a killer. I see too many buyers blow themselves up. But you know what? They don't get blown up. They live with their lousy purchase because they don't want their house taken away from them. And anyway, they're making a salary. Here's what I saw recently. Yeah, we get the automatic renewal, but you know what? It was silent. The kind of business that could be in this building or this industrial park. This was a bakery, a big industrial bakery. They didn't sell to the public. They sold to supermarkets and restaurants. The owner, when a vacancy came up, leased to another bakery. That changes everything, because then the other bakery was growing traffic. And this company had just started a retail operation from that bakery. So it was the best bakery in that city, believe me, the best. And so the people who used to eat this stuff at restaurants and supermarkets now could go to this place beside there. Well, as soon as the darn landlord let another bakery in, it diverted attention. Okay, Scott, any warnings on these things?
Yeah, this is a huge issue, Ted. And I think later in this memo, you'll see that the lease actually, I think the next extension or option comes up next week based on the current timeline. So that's something you definitely want to be cognizant of. And leases for sure can blow up. You know, I had a client last week that lease got pulled out from under him because essentially the large national shopping center decided instead of leasing to his relatively small retail store, they would lease to an operation that could buy out essentially half that section of the mall. And landlords are for sure going to do that. So you have to be careful. And especially in consumer facing businesses where they come to your place of business, when there's a change of ownership, you want that continuity. So you absolutely don't, for the most part, want to move in or buy a business and then have to move in and immediately almost move out.
So there's some information about the lease. When you're looking at these leases, whether the owner owns whether the business owner owns the building and the land or not, you need to go get market rate. This takes about 1.5 minutes. You call your friend, the commercial leasing agent, or you go online and on the web, and you can see what all the residential, industrial, commercial properties are. You see their market rates. It's right there. Minutes, you know this. So if the rent that's in that P&L, profit and loss statement, is high or low, well, you're going to know it because you just did what I said. Spend 2 minutes, nail it down. I'm telling you, you really need to have legal counsel review these leases. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've read thousands of leases, and every now and then I still see something some searcher shares with me that I would have missed. And by the way, I never talk about this with my clients. I tell them, go see lawyer, the right kind of lawyer. List the assets. One of the things I give my clients is there are a couple forms, 2 or 3 of them, and it says these are all the assets that I, the seller, am going to convey at closing to the buyer. Sometimes it says these are some I won't be able to for 30 days or whatever. But there's also a list that says, you may have seen this in our tour, you're not getting this, like the Bentley in the driveway with the custom license plate. If there's assets that have significant value, remember what you're going to see is being made up. The value of those, it's made up. So you need to know what each and every one of those assets are worth. And how do you do that? Well, there are appraisers to do it. If you're knowledgeable in the industry, you can also go online. I had somebody recently on a deal. He went to eBay and he found quite a few sellers of an industrial asset selling it online. So he knew that that piece of machinery, if he bought it used, like it is in the businesses he's going to buy, was about $10,000. So if the owner would have said, in the list of assets. We value this machine at 12,000. My guy would have said, okay, you keep that, reduce the price by 12,000, and I'm going to go buy this one from eBay. What it does is it gets these owners and brokers back into reality. This is one of the things I do. On my website, the very top line, it says, I've saved my buyer clients, I think we're at about 137 million. Some of it comes from this kind of stuff, where we know what the broker doesn't, or the seller doesn't think we're going to discover. We show it to them and they give it to us. There it is. This is what you need to see. Intellectual, this is important. Nail it down. I'm going to ask Scott too. Nail down the scope of intellectual property. It's way beyond what you might think it is. It's not just the phone number and the website domain. Do you have anything on this, Scott?
Sure. I mean, you want to look at things like the licenses. Presumably, you know, they've got a pretty complicated supply chain here, and they've got supply chain software. So you want to make sure those licenses are in place. And two, in the reps, in the actual purchase agreement, you also want something that says they're not violating anyone's intellectual property rights. So you want this nailed down both in what they own, what they use, and that they're not using anything that they don't actually have the rights to use.
You know, on this supply chain stuff, people, listen up. Boy, did I hear a horror story. I won't tell it to you because it's a long one, but it was by a lawyer who specializes in online cybersecurity stuff. He said he saw a client almost go out of business because all the client access to the customer, that's this company, got into this company's books and records, including the customer payment information for this particular vendor. I'm looking at it right now on the screen. Because a supplier upstream got invaded in a hack, and then it was able to get into their customers and their suppliers and get all the books, records, anything they wanted. Oops! You talk about lawsuits and you talk about being out of business tomorrow morning. So when you're doing your due diligence, if the business is heavily dependent upon online linking to suppliers and customers, you're going to be responsible if they trace you, the distributor, were breached and you hurt a customer or a supplier. Get these damn licenses and permitted nailed down. Look at this. Another thing I love. They attach it to this. We're going to see it. They attach it to it. They give you a full copy of their financial statements, including depreciation schedules. I mean, it's just, how often you're going to see this? Like never or rarely. You need to see this if you're buying a barber shop. Double Yahoo here. They're going to give you more stuff you need, like the tax returns and the invoices and blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is something you're not going to see very often, brokers and sellers, because it's almost always not in their best interest. I made this acronym up. It's called CELBS, C-E-L-B-S. If you don't remember anything else from today, C-E-L-B-S. You can study the financial statements forever. My feeling is we don't need to see financial statements to know whether or not we're going to buy a company. We want to know about the non-financial factors. We want to know to what degree explicitly do the customers, the employees, the landlord, the bank, and the suppliers add value to this business or take value away from it. And when we interview or investigate customers, employees, landlord, bank, and suppliers, we know what this business's history is. We know what it is this week, and they tell us what it's going to be in the future. We can construct a financial statement without ever seeing the financial statements. All we have to do is customer has to tell us what the volume they buy, supplier tells us what they sell. We just got cost of goods sold, didn't we? We just got revenue or turnover. These are some of the shortcuts that I use with my clients so we don't get too mesmerized by the financial statements. And remember, the most important non-financial factor, sustainable competitive advantage. If they can't spell that out, then you're going to discover after you buy the business that some competitors are going to get kind of frisky and they're going to go after your customers. They're going to go after your employees. So here's a whole bunch more stuff about numbers. just take them all with a grain of salt. Look, they break down they call it trading statement, profit and loss statement. Don't forget, trailing 12 months. But what I ask my clients to do, I hope you do, is we want to do a best case, worst case, most likely case forecast. We want to do it like in the first moments of due diligence. Because if you do a worst case and you say, I'm not willing to bet my house on that one, well, maybe you don't want to do the deal. If you do the most likely case and it shows everybody's got to be doing everything right and be smart, you get to confirm with yourself it's worth the risk. If it is worth the risk and you've got the right advisory team, keep going to due diligence, because then you'll look at this, the detail. Remember, we already talked, be sure you verify wages. You got to verify all of this stuff, but wages. But again, look, they put it all here for us. We don't have to go fishing. The adjustments. Again, this is what I love. They actually take the time to tell us the magical thinking they use to adjust the business's financial statements. In this case, I think they did a pretty good deal for the most part. But if you don't see anything like this, it means they're trying to either pull the wool over your eyes or they're just lazy. You know, it says some of these expenses were reverted back into net profit. So we have seller discretionary earnings. This is the word I love, which is truly relevant. BS, not necessarily. You need to prove that. What about interest expense? Oh, ignore interest expense. Well, guess what, searchers? The day after you buy the business, you have interest expense. That's going to affect cash flow. Please. And guess what? I'm going to ask Scott. He probably sees these adjustments all the time. Anything you want to talk about on just this whole idea of seller discretionary earnings and adjustments?
For sure. I mean, I think you have to tear into the financials, and I think this is great. And one of the great things about the CIM in general, if you don't get one like this sort of tells you what you yourself need to investigate and backfill to get this information. Obviously, if you do it on your own, you're going to do it with a little bit more cynical eye. But you truly need to make sure that these SDE add backs are actually correct. Like, for sure, if there's a company car and it's a Bentley instead of a Corolla or something, yeah, add that back in. But you have to look to make sure it's actually real. And some of those are offset, like Ted said, the fact that we're maybe paying the owner 40 grand lower than market rate. So you have to take that into account too.
Listen, seller personal expenses, don't fall for this. Keep your job if you don't want more perks. When you own a business, you get perks. So the perks stay in the P&L. The excessive perks, like the Bentley to the Corolla, well, it gets adjusted. Everybody who owns a business gets a company car. If you want a Bentley, fine. But for the purposes of analyzing a seller's business, we put in the Corolla. You know, the other thing that some brokers in particular do, they say, if we're doing the multiple of profit, we're going to add back the owner's salary, and then we're going to multiply by 3 the multiple we use for this kind of business, and that's the value and price. Wrong. Because the day after you buy the business has to what? Either pay a manager or you. So we multiply the risk factor by what real profit is. And we don't fall for we multiply it by cash flow, because cash flow is a completely different number. Any of you who you're not following me, this is why you have to have somebody like me or an accountant on your team, because you can pay 30, 40, 50% more than a business is worth and not discover it until a few months after you buy it if you don't understand and how to negotiate the difference between profit and positive cash flow. And all these unnecessary expenses. Yeah, prove it. Okay, so there they are. Numbers, numbers, numbers. They do a good job here. Don't remember, you're going to get to see this. They do a good job here helping you understand what to focus in on in financial analysis. But if you don't get this from a broker or seller, you need to derive all of this. This is no fun. And if you screw up, good night. First of all, you'll embarrass yourself at the bank and you won't get a loan. Second of all, you might get a loan and you'll regret it. This is where accountants come in. They do this all day, but it better be the kind of accountant who does deals of the type and size you want to do in your city. So we're not going to spend any time. Remember, you're going to see this. Competitive analysis. Look, they tell you who all their competitors are in the good, bad, and ugly. I love this. And if they don't give it to you, folks, you got to go find out. Here, an industry report. Somebody spent, these are not cheap. Somebody went to IBIS World and they bought an industry report. So when they tell you, here's what our industry is like in this document, this CIM, it's no BS. This is it. Came from an incredible third party. If they don't hand you this, you got to go get it. And if you don't go get it, you're flying blind. You're not going to discover what you need to know till after you buy it. Look at this. Industry at glass. They break it down. I mean, I just love strengths, weaknesses, blah, blah, blah. Which leads to SWOT. Put in the comments if you've ever seen a business broker do this in a CIM. They tell you the weaknesses, the strengths, the opportunities, the threats. This you need to read when you see this thing right here. See if I can blow it up. Don't search for Miss Perfect, folks. All businesses have flaws. If it's making the kind of money you want, huh? If it's making the kind of money you want, why not buy it? As long as the strengths exceed the weaknesses. And by the way, I don't like threats too much, but I love weaknesses because weaknesses mean that's something to improve and make more money, make the business more marketable. I see something up here. Hold on, I just got to click this thing. Okay, go on. Just give me a second. Got it. If a broker or seller doesn't give you something this detailed, guess what? You have to derive it. If you're spending money on offers without knowing this, not smart. Scott, is there anything, I'm going so fast. Anything you want to say on this or maybe something I've stepped over so far?
No, I think this is fantastic. I think we've raised, 4 key issues to me, which is the owner's role in the business. It looks like he's more the linchpin of the whole operation rather than a CEO. So that's a concern. Obviously, the lease that's coming up next week, and we know you could lose a lot of your employees if you have to relocate far away. I'm a little worried about the growth case here for the investment decision because he's grown by acquisition in the past. So depending on your ability to get financing in the future, that's something you may or may not be able to do if you're sort of maxed out by purchasing this. And then I think we're worried about the inventory because all throughout this, it's sprinkled in that there's a lot of outdated inventory, and that's the bulk of the purchase price. So I think you got to think about just how much inventory you're willing to buy, and that's going to totally impact your ROI based on the purchase price. But that's sort of where I'm at. Overall, though, this is a fantastic CIM.
Yeah, isn't it? Strengths, weaknesses. So can you see how you can use this? This is maybe the second most important thing I've ever tell anybody who hires me. I'm now telling you, when you get these CIMs, they are laying out for you your due diligence pathway. It's the agenda to question the broker, the seller, and any other stakeholders, such as selves. Remember who they are. Look at this. Every one of these is a question. Every one of these, you're saying, tell me more, tell me more. You're not doing it in a negative way. If you try to turn this stuff into an interrogation, you will be dumped. Brokers don't need you, believe me. There are more buyers out there than there are businesses for sale. So you got to behave. So you very tactfully, I practice, I role play with my clients. We role play on Zoom, how we ask questions and how we answer questions. So we don't piss off or scare off brokers and sellers. If it's a good company, we want it. And we know if we make the other side nervous, they'll dump us. There are 15 other searchers looking at it.
Ted, are you sharing screens right now?
Am I what?
Are you sharing the screen right now?
I am. Does Scott wave your, do you see the screen?
I do.
Yeah, everybody sees it. Okay, so now we're on the business's weakness. Remember, you're going to get this if you stuck with me. I just love that they actually tell you this stuff. I get this sense in this that here's a guy, here's a broker and an owner who want to do the right thing. It may not be a perfect business, but we're not going to learn this much about almost any other opportunity. So I say we give this our all. If we can't do this deal, then we move on. Look at this. They talk about the opportunity for the business. Sharpen your pencil. This is where we're going to make money after we buy it. When I have a couple of clients in here right now. They hired me because they want to buy a company and grow it to 2 or 3. I did a deal last year in England. My guy just bought another one 2 weeks ago. We're going to buy another one in the next month or 2. That's how you make the big bucks. A whole bunch of small companies, you put them together and you make a whole lot more money. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for how are we going to build the company besides mergers and acquisitions? And some things you can't do until you do deal number 2 and combine it with deal number 1 because you're just not big enough to pull it off. Okay, remember threats, that's just where you ask questions. And here's the concluding message. We hope you buy the business. They didn't mention cyber risk. I don't know how that works. What happened? Look, I like this. And it's true. I have absolutely no objection to anything. But I'll tell you what really happens next. What happens next depends upon the quality of your advisory team. Because this broker and this seller are savvy. You walk in there as a do-it-yourselfer, not smart. Anybody like Scott want to talk about when you bring on an advisory team and activate them?
For sure. I mean, this is great background for me to have as far as, you know, knowing the context of the deal. And to be totally honest, I often don't get this from my clients. So it's helps me operate more efficiently and effectively if I have, you know, definitely as much information as I can get. I am a little concerned about number 3 to a degree, because I want to make sure that we don't, before we do diligence, or enough diligence, we're not forced into some kind of binding offer. I saw an agreement a couple weeks ago that based on no diligence and very skeletal information about the deal, it basically was the definitive agreement to obligate my client to buy a $3+ million company. And that's just way too rushed of a timetable. But assuming we can, you know, it's a proper LOI rather than a binding offer, I'd be okay with that. And that's sort of how I think this would proceed.
And what Scott, our legal counsel, is talking about is be a little careful how quickly you jump on nailing down any negotiating and offers. You could make a mistake in the LOI. We're not even covering in this. Most buyers actually in searches screw up their whole opportunity at the LOI stage. Okay, hold on. We're done. I'm just running. Whoops. Yeah, who to contact. Okay, here's where I got this stuff. These people are in Australia, business broker marketing service. Don't worry, I'll send you a link to it. You've seen their most robust CIM. This is the one they give for brokers who know this business is going to sell, and they want to create buyer competition. And like Labradors, buyers are slobbering all over this kind of deal. This is what you might see. He has, I think, 7 other layers of these, from a 1-page teaser to 2-page or one for a mom and pop business. So go to the website. Why? I'm not recommending this company because you're not brokers. It's brokers who hire them. Here's why. Go copy and paste or download like I did. Whatever sample CIM fits the kind and, well, not the kind, but the size of business you're looking at. So if you're looking for a Main Street business and you want a 1-page teaser and a 3-page follow-up, and you want to see the kind of NDA that a lot of brokers are putting out, go download that. And then when you're talking to a broker, don't brandish it because they'll throw you out, but at least you know what you're supposed to see. And if they don't show you and you like the business, guess what? You need to derive it. I'm done. Scott, any closing comments?
No, this was fantastic. And I can't repeat again, you know, how great of a template this is. And if you don't get this, you should be striving to recreate it and the questions that it prompts. I think everything you said is that you see this thing from brokers, and it's very much coming out of the real estate context, almost more than the M&A context, is the brokers are trying to lead you down this path of super urgency It's a hot property. There's no time to do diligence, and we want a commitment very, very early. And that's what they're trying to lead you down this path. They're trying to get you to go ahead and start walking down the road toward committing yourself to a purchase price by providing explanations before you do any diligence and things like that. And I think, it's important to realize that some of this is indeed part of the process you can expect from brokers, but some of it is a little over the top. So, what your goal is to show, and Ted's better at this than I am probably, but to show interest, but at the same time, strongly communicate that all the information you're going to need to verify, and you're not going to bind yourself to anything until you've gone through that diligence or verification process.
Okay, this is really important. If you haven't seen and heard part 1, go to my YouTube channel. This is Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate. The link's right in front of you. CIMs and CBRs, the ugly. Ugly is as ugly does, and I'm not kidding. You need to see this stuff.
Hey, you. That's right, you. Have you been looking to buy an exciting and profitable business? Are you tired of searching, but only finding barriers that impede you from owning a wonderful business? Well, have we got some good news for you. You can find and buy the right business the right way. And you don't have to go it alone. For over 30 years, author and transaction advisor Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate, has been helping buyers worldwide achieve win-win done deals. Ted Leverette says, you can't buy it if you can't find it. You see, buying a business is all about search. Because if you can't find it, you can't buy it. It's about being best and first. First on the scene with sellers, and being the seller's first choice, and top of mind for brokers and sellers. And most importantly, avoiding buyer competition. What about having to compete with other buyers? Well, you have to outbid them, which is a good way to pay more than a business is worth. Searchers do better with a winning business buyer marketing plan, and that's where Ted Leverette comes in. He'll help you prepare a winning plan, and then he'll guide your actions so you can find and then buy the right business the right way. But searching is not enough. The reality is too many people buy the wrong business, or they buy the right business, but on the wrong terms. That's why, if you want to buy the right business the right way, it makes sense to have Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate, on your advisory team. And one of the best ways to know what the savviest searchers and buyers do is to read Ted Leverette's books, How to Prepare Yourself and Find the Right Business to Buy, and How to Buy the Right Business the Right Way. You can get them at his website, partneroncall.com. Don't chance it. Right now, go to partneroncall.com, get the books, and schedule a free and private telephone conversation with Ted Leverette.